Pitchers and catchers have officially reported to spring training in Fort Myers. I'll tell you everything you need to know about the Red Sox pitching staff for 2025 on today's Locked On Red Sox.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Gabby Maljanian, former ESPN social media associate and current host of the Boston Balling podcast as well. And I'm here to bring you the latest in all things Boston Red Sox, Monday through Friday, straight to your favorite podcast feed, all for free. So you have nothing to lose but to continue to check it out because Locked On is here for you every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Happy Friday, happy Valentine's Day for those of you who celebrate. Hope you have a lovely romantic evening or weekend planned with your lover. I know for me, my husband is planning to surprise me. We are going to be going out to dinner somewhere tonight, but he has yet to tell me where. So that'll be really fun and enjoyable, just the two of us and having a great night together. And while you're celebrating Valentine's Day, we also celebrated ringing in pitchers and catchers. Red Sox pitchers and catchers have officially all reported to spring training. So I thought, what better way at the end of the week than to review the pitchers that the Red Sox will have on staff for the 2025 season. Now, I don't think there's any argument that the Red Sox are for sure a better pitching staff in 2025 than they were in 2024. There's no doubt about it that they obviously, assuming that most players are healthy, will produce better numbers on the pitching side than they did last year, primarily in the bullpen with the fact that they added some balance to the pen with some left-handed pitching so they can hopefully get guys up and moving quickly and not blow so many games late. Because in 2024, after the All-Star break, we saw the Red Sox in the second half of the season blow tons of games, primarily due to the bullpen. They did not have a lot of guys that they could rely on consistently to throw well in the pen, and that's something that they wanted to fix going into this season. And then you look at the starting rotation, added a couple guys, have some guys coming back from last year, and another starter who was injured and missed all of last year due to his recovery, but is now ready to come back and pitch in 2025 and bounce back better than ever. So lots to go over on today's show. But the biggest topic of discussion when it comes to the Red Sox pitching staff right now is, will they deploy a 6-man rotation in 2025? Because you have 6 potential players right now who could start this upcoming season, because you have Garrett Crochet, who the Red Sox acquired this offseason and who they envision to be the ace of the future for years to come for this team, as long as they extend him, which they must do soon. He was acquired at the winter meetings in a deal that was headlined by prospect Kyle Teal, and he gives the Red Sox that sure bona fide ace that they've been coveting for years. They've already announced that there are no plans for an innings limit for him, even though he has had some challenges with injury. So it'll definitely be exciting to see what the left-handed pitcher can do across the entirety of the season for Boston. And he's ready to lead a revamped pitching staff. So he is that number 1 starter, presumably for Boston. Then you have Tanner Houck, who will likely be the number 2, coming off of an all-star season that he wants to build off of. The right-handed pitcher led the Red Sox rotation in ERA and WAR, and through the only complete game out of all the starters in 2024. That was a phenomenal performance. I remember how much fun that was. The biggest point of interest for Houck will be his ability to push through late season fatigue, as he did hit a rough patch in August before bouncing back. And I've already said this on the show, but I do think a lot of that has to do with them pushing him past his limits in terms of how many innings he's used to throwing at a time. He threw more innings in 2024 than he has over the rest of his career prior to that. So I do think that'll pay dividends for him going into 2025, because now he's pushed himself to throw more innings. So hopefully his arm is a little bit more durable to be able to do that. Then you have Walker Buehler, who was the last major free agent the Red Sox have signed up to this point, coming to Boston on a one-year deal. He returned to the mound in 2024 after missing almost 2 years. His return was unexpected, appearing in 16 games at struggling at times, definitely had some ups and downs, but he seemed to have discovered something in the playoffs, because he surrendered just 6 runs in 15 innings, with all 6 of them being in his first appearance. And then he just cruised in the rest of his outings after that and looked absolutely dominant. So he's looking to build off of that postseason and return to his pre-injury form heading into this upcoming season. Then there's Brayan Bello, who was last year's opening day starter and sees himself as the number 4 starter in this rotation right now. Last season, he certainly saw ups and downs, because he had a great April before he struggled a lot in May and June. And then he looked to round a corner in the second half, starting 13 games and having a 3.47 ERA across 72 and 2/3 innings pitched. And he also lowered the number of home runs he allowed to just 5 in the second half. So Bello definitely is looking to build off of that second half run that he had and the adjustments that he made midway through the season. He's hoping to retain that going into this year. And I have a lot of faith in Bello. I feel like he has the potential to really grow into a big time starting pitcher for this Red Sox team. I just think he's still working some things out in his career, but it's very exciting to think about the fact that he really doesn't need to be much better than a number 4 starter with the guys I've already discussed above him. Then this is where it gets dicey, because we have Lucas Giolito, who signed last offseason to be a key addition to the 2024 rotation, but then he got injured in his second spring training start and needed Tommy John surgery. So now healthy, he insists that he's ready to work and help the team. As he comes back from injury, there's a chance the Red Sox may limit his workload to begin the season, despite the fact that he might want to do something else, because he's definitely ready to go all out and ready to push himself, but the Red Sox might not be quite ready to push him to that limit just yet. So I could see them easing him back into it by giving him an innings restriction possibly when he starts the season. But he'll be a pitcher who hopefully can work his way towards eating lots of innings for the Red Sox. He could be a guy who hopefully is reliable from season start to season finish. Now I'm excited to see what he can do, but there's not a lot of pressure on him to be a high caliber starter by any means, because of the fact that they've acquired and already have some high end talent at the front end of the rotation. If he can be a back end starter who can eat innings the majority of his outings, then he'll be doing his job. Then you have Kutter Crawford, who rounds out what could be a 6-man rotation for the Red Sox and what will be a swingman role. Starting or providing long relief as needed by the team is the type of role we could see him in. I have talked about this a little bit, how they could, instead of going with the 6-man rotation, put him into a reliever role and have him pitch multiple innings at a time out of the pen, which could make sense. Like Houck and Bello, he also saw improvements in 2024, but also rough patches. He led the team with 33 starts and 183 and 2/3 innings pitched, but he also led all of Major League Baseball with 34 home runs surrendered, which is something he absolutely has to figure out, especially if he wants to remain in the rotation. Because if he cannot limit the number of home runs he allows, the Red Sox will not allow him to pitch in the rotation, and he for sure will be a bullpen piece. So he's got to show some improvement here in spring training if he wants to start. So because of the fact that the Red Sox have those 6 guys, will they employ a 6-man rotation? Is it something that could be determined during spring training? Likely, based on how they perform. But they might try to solve the problem of the fact that the bullpen was overworked this past year, because a lot of the issue was that their starters couldn't go deep into games. So the bullpen arms were finding that they were throwing more innings than was desirable. So in the case of this situation with, if the Red Sox do go with a 6-man rotation, I don't know how much the guys would love it, because it does throw off the routines that they've been used to for years of throwing every 5 days, but it would also allow them more rest time in between starts. So for example, if a guy like Lucas Giolito isn't feeling well and needs an extra day before his start, well, good, it's already built in because they have a 6-man rotation, as opposed to if it's that 5th day and they're either forcing him to start or they're trying to make something work by calling somebody up, or maybe then having Cutter Crawford start. But if he's used to pitching out of the bullpen at that point, he might not be as effective. So it could be a spiral effect. Whereas if Giolito's used to throwing every 6 days instead of 5, he could feel like he's more rested. And the next day, when it would be his start, he's more ready to go because he had that extra day. So there is definitely a benefit to doing that. But there are pitchers who have expressed their thoughts on it. Walker Buehler said, I've always been fine with the 5-day routine in years that I've been healthy or when we go on 5 or 6. It doesn't really matter to me. Obviously, I've experienced both and been a part of both. So when we talked about signing with the Red Sox, it was like there is a potential that we would do a 6-man rotation. So he's definitely open to it and has also used to it. So for Buehler, it wouldn't be a huge adjustment period. If that's something they want to do, I'm obviously open to it or kind of accustomed to it. But there's also some pride in trying to go and make 32 starts and throw 200 innings. And I know, given my injury history, that's kind of a different deal. But I have done that. So I think there's pros and cons to both. And I think at the end of the year, that 6-man probably paid some dividends for us with the Dodgers, but also you've got to get there. So yes, he definitely recognizes that there's pros and cons to both. And another pro of it is if you have a guy like Cutter Crawford or Tanner Houck who are stretching out their innings and throwing more innings than they're used to, having that extra day's rest could pay dividends in that regard, because for the two of them, having an extra day to rest because their arm might be a little fatigued because they're pushing themselves a little bit more than they're used to, that could allow them that extra long recovery process. So it'll be interesting to see which direction they go in. I could honestly see them going either way on this, by either doing a 5-man rotation and having Cutter Crawford pitch in the pen, or going with a 6-man rotation. Either way, there are pros and cons. The cons to the 6-man rotation that has already been discussed is if a guy pitched really well in his start, he might not want to wait 6 days before his next start, because that might throw off his mental confidence and his ability to go back out there and perform well again in his next outing. Whereas with 5-man rotations, which is so much more common, if your brain has been functioning to get used to pitching every 5 days, you could still have that mindset in your head. So this is risking them being thrown off in terms of not really feeling like their next start could be as sharp as the last one, because they feel like it's prolonged in between. So definitely something to think about. But if the Red Sox do go with a 6-man rotation, it'll be interesting to see how they execute that and how it works. But coming up, I'm going to be discussing the Red Sox bullpen and what pieces are going to be part of the puzzle in 2025. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. And there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. I have seen my husband use FanDuel firsthand, and it's so easy for him to use, and he's won tons of money on it. So that could be you too. You might as well take advantage of it and check it out today. Spring training has arrived and it is super exciting. The Red Sox pitchers and catchers have all reported. And on today's show, I am just reviewing the Red Sox starting rotation and bullpen and the guys who will likely be part of the picture in 2025. So when it comes to the bullpen, this is a very important area of the roster because this was one of the biggest areas of weakness for the Red Sox in 2024. And they made it a mission to go and improve the bullpen this offseason. And there are some question marks, but there has also been some value added to the bullpen. So I'm hoping that the Red Sox end up on the positive side of that and that the guys they added don't end up completely falling apart. So you have Aroldis Chapman, who was the key reliever that the Red Sox brought in this offseason. He's a lefty and will look to be a shutdown reliever for the team. He's no longer the star reliever from the mid-2010s that we saw it when he was in his prime, but he's still a very capable pitcher. He appeared in 68 games last season for the Pirates, saving 14 games and striking out 98 batters in 61 2/3 innings pitched. His fastball still plays and should allow him to be a key piece of Cora's bullpen. Now, I don't love the idea of him being the closer. I don't know that the Red Sox are really leaning towards making him the closer either. I feel like for him, he's going to be used more as a bridge guy, like that 7th, maybe 8th inning guy that then leads into the closer pitching, just because over the last couple seasons, when he's been used as a setup man, he's pitched really well. And I think it just creates this big burden for him at this point in his career that he doesn't need if the Red Sox expect him to close games consistently. I definitely still think they'll use him in high leverage. I just don't necessarily think him closing games is the best idea for him or for the team, because I would worry that it would be too much for him at this point in his career. So using him in a 7th or 8th inning role type of capacity would make a lot of sense for a guy like him with where he's at in his career now. Then you have Justin Slaten, who to me should be the closer. No doubt was one of, if not the best reliever that the Red Sox had in 2024. He proved himself really early in his rookie season as a dependable arm in the bullpen. And now he'll be looked to step up even more, especially with the departures of Kenley Jansen and Chris Martin this offseason. What might be his most valuable stat that the Red Sox hope he repeats this year is the lack of home runs he gave up, only giving up 4 and 55 in a third inning. So that's huge because the Red Sox pitching staff did have some problems with giving up home runs last year. So the fact that he was able to limit those significantly is something the Red Sox really liked, and they're hoping he can keep that up going into this year, as well as his pitch arsenal, which he had a very competitive variety of pitches that he was able to use regularly. And there was no doubt about it that when Justin Slaten was out there, you knew what he was going to give you. You knew that the Red Sox were going to get a guy who was going to go out there and step up and be the guy that the Red Sox need to take care of business out of the pen. And then when he got hurt for a good portion of the season, it was very apparent that the Red Sox were missing him. It was very apparent that they needed him back because they didn't have a lot of reliable relievers. And there were many instances in which I was watching a game last year where I said, wow, I wish Justin Slaten could pitch right now. So when he was hurt, they had to go with some of their weaker relievers to fill that void. But he is a consistently good reliever, and I'm excited to see him grow on that in 2025 because I think we'll see a really special season from him. Liam Hendriks will be returning, a right-handed pitcher who signed last season right as spring training began, with the expectation that he would return to the mound at some point near the end of August or early September. Unfortunately, that did not happen as he struggled to bounce back as expected in his rehab stint in Worcester. So they had to shut him down for the season and say, you'll be able to pitch next year. Now he's had a fully healthy offseason to rest. And so he and the Red Sox hope that he can return close to the level he was at from 2019 through 2022 before he suffered with his injury, where he was one of the best closers in the game. Now, it is a question mark, and it's a risk. If the Red Sox decide they want him to be the closer, yes, there are some pros to that in that he has experience closing games and he was very masterful at it. in years prior when he was closing games. But the problem with that is that he has been away from the game. So we don't really know what kind of pitcher we're going to get. And I just think early on in the season, it could be a bit of a risk having him close games. I get if they want to transition him into the closing role eventually. I just don't think it would be wise to go into opening day saying he's the closer just because of the fact that he needs to show that he's fully 100% and that he's ready to go out there and pitch at that level, because the Red Sox cannot continue to try to just turn somebody into a closer and hope that it works out. And then if it doesn't work out, there's no backup plan. I personally like Justin Slaten to be the closer just because I feel like he proved himself a lot last year and he gave himself a good opportunity to be able to showcase what he can do in that capacity. So I think the Red Sox should go into opening day with the idea that he's going to close games. But if they do decide it's going to be Liam Hendriks, they just have to hope that he channels his inner 2019 to 2022 self and that we get a semblance of that, who we can rely on to close baseball games. But either way, even if he doesn't close games and he pitches in another role in relief, I'm really excited to have him. It's hard to not root for the guy with everything he's been through between getting cancer and bouncing back from that, and then also getting injured and having to recover from that and now coming back again. He is resilient and loves baseball and just wants to be out there. So I'm really excited to have that kind of attitude in the Red Sox bullpen. And I'm just excited to see him out there no matter what capacity he pitches in for the Boston Red Sox. Justin Wilson, another guy the Red Sox acquired this offseason, a left-handed pitcher. This was kind of a confusing signing for me because he did struggle down the stretch in Cincinnati, which saw him finish the season with a 5.59 ERA in 46 and 2/3 innings pitched. There is a chance that his workload caught up to him and led to his brutal August and September when he gave up 14 earned runs in 17 and 2/3 innings, compared to his July, which saw him pitch rather decently relatively. As the second lefty in the bullpen, he might be viewed as coming in to get a batter or two to end an inning instead of looking to get length out of the 37-year-old. But if he struggles early, I would not be surprised if he gets let go for more promising arms in Worcester, because the Red Sox do have some talent in the farm system right now, guys in AAA who are hungry and eager to come up. And I feel like Justin Wilson is just an experimental pitcher right now. They knew that they needed to go out and get somebody, and they acquired him because of the fact that he's a lefty and he can help with that variation in the bullpen. I don't know how confident the Red Sox are in his numbers, but it's definitely something to be concerned about. You never know how a pitcher is going to perform when they go to a new team. Sometimes a change is good for a player. Other times it's not as good and they have trouble adapting to the new location that they're in. So I really hope that doesn't happen for him. And I hope we maybe see some more of a positive and surprising performance coming from him when he comes to Boston, and that the Red Sox are able to get as much out of him as they can. But I do feel like there is a chance that his usage is limited to if there's traffic on the base paths and they need somebody to come in and get the third out, and he could be a tough matchup for that specific hitter, kind of like a spot reliever that might be best suited for him rather than the Red Sox going in there expecting him to pitch a full inning or two. So we'll have to see what kind of role the Red Sox do use him in. But from the standpoint of his numbers and what he brings to the table, I definitely am a little bit concerned about consistency with him and giving up runs at a pretty relatively quick pace. And again, workload could be pointed to. I've used the workload excuse for pitchers on this Red Sox team before, like Tanner Houck and like Cutter Crawford. If you are pitching more than you're used to, then fatigue could catch up to you. And I think we saw this with a lot of the Red Sox bullpen in 2024, as they were being overworked and overused because of the fact that the starters couldn't go deep into games. And so that could be part of it. If he is more limited in usage, maybe we see a higher success rate from him. But I would definitely take Justin Wilson with a grain of salt. Don't get too excited about this signing. I think he's a guy that definitely provides some versatility in the bullpen in terms of the fact that they're very right-handed heavy and he is a lefty. So that's a plus. But on the flip side of that, he definitely doesn't have the numbers that are eye-popping that Red Sox fans would have wanted to see from a guy coming into Boston and taking over in the bullpen, one that seriously struggled in the second half of last year. So we'll have to see how that goes with him, and I'm really hoping that he surprises us in a good way and that he ends up being a reliable reliever out of the pen. But coming up, I'm going to be going over the last few bullpen arms that the Red Sox will have going into 2025. Don't forget that Locked On Red Sox is available on any podcast platform, including YouTube. You can subscribe today wherever you listen to podcasts. I will be here Monday through Friday, bringing you the latest in all things Boston Red Sox. And you can check me out on Twitter at Gabby Maljanian. And you can also check out the show on Twitter at LO_Red Sox to interact with other Red Sox fans. And if you're looking for more baseball content, definitely check out Locked On MLB with host Paul Sullivan, aka Sully, who mixes some humor into it and talks about all things going on around the league. So if you want to make sure you're up to date on all things going on with other Major League Baseball teams, his show is the place for you. You can check it out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts right after this, as I do appreciate you making Locked On Red Sox your first listen, but you can definitely make his show your second. As the Red Sox inch closer and closer to opening day, all the pitchers and catchers are at spring training, and it's very exciting to think about the Red Sox season being as close as it is. I mean, are there glaring weaknesses still on the Red Sox roster? 100%. Is that something that I hope they do something about? Yes. And specifically, when it comes to the overall makeup of this roster, is the Red Sox roster a playoff team? I do think so. But if they want to be a World Series caliber team, that's a different story. And the bullpen is going to be a big thing that could make or break the Red Sox season heading into 2025. And when you look at some bullpen arms that the Red Sox could have, Greg Weisser is one of them. He had a very up and down first season in Boston because he was one of the guys that came to the Red Sox in the Alex Verdugo trade, but he did still finish with a 3.13 ERA in 63 and a third innings pitched. He started the season well, but then ended it on a roll as he did not allow an earned run across 17 and 2/3 innings pitched in August and September. So it was almost like it was a completely new pitcher. Like we could say early on, yeah, he was pitching well, but at the end of the season, it was like he was incredibly dominant. He's definitely better served in low or medium leverage as opposed to pitching in those high leverage situations, and he could serve that role very well. He just has too much pressure on him for him to handle in high leverage situations, as batters hit 357 with a 427 on base percentage and 518 slugging against him in those high leverage situations last year. Every team does need that low leverage arm to pitch the 6th or 7th inning, and he can fill that role in 2025. And it just depends on the health of some of the other pitchers here too, because you still have Garrett Whitlock in the mix, who's going to be coming back and pitching out of the bullpen. The Red Sox already said they plan to use him in the pen and not as a starter. So Greg Weisser at some point could end up going down to AAA. I wouldn't really be surprised if he is, but I think Alex Cora learned his lesson from last year to not throw Weisser in high leverage situations. And the problem that the Red Sox had in 2024 was, again, because the bullpen was super fatigued. Sometimes he had to throw guys in spots they weren't really best in. And so sometimes he didn't have a choice but to throw Weisser in those types of high leverage situations. But I'm hoping he now has enough options, especially healthy options being the key word, to where he can throw other guys into those high leverage situations and not feel like he's forcing it with a guy like Weisser when he doesn't really have the other options, and that was it for him. So hopefully he has more options this year to do that. Weisser has to stay in lower leverage and has to be more consistent. Zach Kelly has spent parts of 3 seasons in Boston, but 2024 was his biggest role with the team. He appeared in 49 games and pitched 56 and 2/3 innings where he struck out 61 batters, ending the season with the biggest moment which was getting out of a no-out bases loaded jam against the Yankees on Sunday Night Baseball. After being one of the best arms in the bullpen for the first half, Kelly struggled in the second half. I talked about this extensively on the show. His struggles in the second half were very different from what we saw from him in the first half. It was basically a new pitcher, a guy who went from pitching really well and being reliable to then not being reliable. And again, like I alluded to before, with the starters not being able to pitch us deep into games and there being some injuries in the bullpen, Zach Kelly was one of the go-to guys that Alex Cora went to a lot of the time. He was a guy that was being overused and used in more situations than I think the Red Sox would have wanted to see him in, but it's because Alex Cora wasn't really left with a whole lot of a choice when it came to that. So I'm hoping that because, again, they have more options in 2025, that his workload is a little bit less, so we can hopefully see more of the Zach Kelly we saw in the first half of the season that was able to get it done regularly, because that could be a big boost to the bullpen. Cooper Criswell, who started for the Red Sox a lot of games in 2024 and actually impressed out of the rotation. He was that guy who did whatever he was asked to do last year, whether it was starting or coming out of the pen. He appeared in 26 games, winning 6 of them while throwing 99 and a third innings. He won't be needed to start this season and could see himself being optioned to Worcester at times to bring up a fresh arm, or based on the fact that the Red Sox just have a lot of options. But to begin the year, it wouldn't very be surprising to see him in a role similar to the one that Chase Anderson held last season. Pitch when you're either up by a lot or losing by a lot to preserve the bullpen in either situation. I mean, you definitely want to put the weaker guys in those spots. I don't really see Criswell as a weaker guy. If anything, I would put Winkowski or Kelly maybe in that spot until they prove that they can be more consistent out there. But Criswell, if he struggles, could be a guy that gets used in that situation, because Chase Anderson, even though he was not a good pitcher, actually had a role on the team last year, and that was pitching in games where they were blowing out another team or another team was blowing out then, and the result was basically set in stone already. That was when Chase Anderson would take the mound. So maybe we see somebody, could be Criswell, in that type of role, or Criswell is used as a longer reliever who pitches maybe 2 or 3 innings out of the pen now that he has the starting experience from last year. So he's a guy who could be used in a few different capacities. So we'll have to see what the Red Sox do with him. Josh Winkowski could win a long reliever role in spring training and also could end up beginning the year in Worcester. Still, the Red Sox might view him as more of a valuable starter in Worcester alongside guys like Quinn Preister, Hunter Dobbins, and Richard Fitz. Preister, the Red Sox traded for at the trade deadline this year, and Richard Fitz they acquired in the Alex Verdugo trade. He made a couple starts in 2024 and was impressive. But with Josh Winkowski, it's going to be interesting to see where he goes, because he had an up and down season in 2024 too. So there is a possibility that the Red Sox view him as being best in Worcester to start the season, as opposed to being in the bullpen for the major league team. I see the Red Sox having him up in the majors, pitching out of the pen. But with all the reshuffling that they've been doing and the roster and all that, and who's going to be coming back this year that wasn't here last year, nothing would really surprise me a lot at this point. So I think it could go either way with him. We either see him pitching in relief on the major league roster, or he starts the season in Worcester. Then you have Brennan Bernardino, who has been a staple in the Red Sox bullpen the past 2 seasons, with Chapman being the number 1 lefty in the bullpen and the signing of Justin Wilson now to a major league deal. There might not be a ton of space for Bernardino, but if an injury happens, he'll likely be the first one out of the gate. I could see him starting the season in Worcester just because of the lefties that they've acquired. He had a big role in the bullpen before because of the fact that he was pretty much the only lefty, but now that they have acquired some more lefties, they might not feel like he's as needed. He did struggle in 2024 too when he was up in the majors, so starting the season in AAA might make sense for him, and then he could naturally be that first man up if somebody were to get hurt. So we'll have to see how this all plays out, but that could be a rough outline of what the Red Sox pitching staff looks like come opening day. All I know is that I am very excited to get this season started. Now that I saw Red Sox Twitter posting all these pictures of players at spring training, I'm so excited to see baseball back on my TV. Like I always say, keep the faith, go Red Sox, and I'll catch you on the flip side.